Welcome back to the channel. We're looking at the Hollywood Orchestrator again today. This time we're going to look at inspiring how to write your own presets and how to write your own orchestrator patterns. It's really a glorified arpeggiator. It has a lot of features that give it advantages that synthesizer arpeggiators, basic arpeggiators, don't have. The advantages are like you can select one of the notes in a pattern and just change its velocity so that its velocity is different. We're going to go over a few tips like that and inspire you to create your own presets. This is a pattern that I made. Here's some basics. To start with, you'll want to pick a preset that is close to how you want things to end up. So if you're using the scores, for instance, pick a genre or category in a preset that kind of sound like you want your end product to sound, because the more you can get the presets to do for you, the better. It's going to set up not just instruments, but instrument articulations, whether or not the runs are playable or it's a staccato. It's going to set up some instrument balances, like here the basses are very loud. It's going to set up octaves, arranger modes, velocities and key ranges. It's going to have preset velocities for each of these notes that you may want to take advantage of. When the notes play, like if the zone is going to have something like only play when the velocity is above a certain level. All of those things are going to be set up. So explore the presets, and the first tip is really just start with a preset that sounds like what you're trying to go for. And then if you are copying and pasting notes, let's say it came with a pattern that had a certain set of velocities, and these velocities were lower than these velocities. See the little line here, and the orange is shorter than the long line there. Be aware as you start copying and pasting things. Let's say we just had this much written. Before you start copying and pasting this over and over, that you're copying and pasting the velocities as well, because I've done this several times where I've copied and pasted patterns, and then I realized I had to edit all of the velocities. But the problem there, it's maybe a bug, maybe a feature request, is that now that these are smaller velocities than these, and these are 127, so the top and bottom notes are 127, and the bottom note, the middle two notes are 42. I cannot, for the life of me, select all notes and get them all to be 127. These middle two won't come up. It won't scale up to 127. Now that may be a feature request, that may be a bug, because some of these notes are already at 27. I would have to individually select any note that is not 127 and bring it up there, up to the range that I can. That isn't a big problem with this pattern because I can select them. But if you have a more intricate pattern and you have to go in and individually select every note that you want to scale, it can be more challenging. So pay attention to, the second tip is really pay attention to where the velocities are before you start copying and pasting. Again, it's kind of the concept of if you wrote 4 notes, give them the velocities that you want them to have before you start drag copying them or moving them around and everything, because everything you do is going to be copied and you don't want to have to redo that work later. So those are 2 tips just to get started. I do have 2 other videos where I just do basics, basic tips that get you to the point where it's more like reading the manual and just giving you like, how do I edit? How do I get to the presets? How do I navigate? When do I solo? How does this solo, these solo buttons solo the sections, these solo buttons solo the MIDI of the instruments and within the section, and they can get lost if you change section, what's soloed over here. It's not clear that there's something been soloed up here and that this solo is going to override these solos. There's another video that kind of goes into that, and there's another video that I made just to kind of say why even use an orchestrator, and is it cheating? Someone made the comment that it's just very limiting, but that's true. That's why I'm making this video. I want to explore how to make these my own. So right now we're listening to the Violin 1 runs playable patch. Here's what we're listening to. And the reason some of those notes were quieter was because if you play the staccato and you make the velocities different for some of the notes. The staccato clearly, the top and bottom notes, top and bottom steps, I should say, I guess, are 127, and these others are 32, and you can hear that in staccato. If you do that same velocity move up here with the violin's runs playable patch, it's not going to do the same thing because they are only controlled by CC1, the MIDI continuous controller. CC stands for continuous controller. Number 1 is the mod wheel, and it is basically controlling how loud they are. That's to show you, pay attention to when the articulation you've selected actually responds to velocity or continuous control. CC1. Another tip, you can hold down a chord and drag the velocity to hear how it's going to sound. So if you're trying to compose or construct your pattern, try kind of live updating. I'm going to hold down a chord and drag the velocity slider. And maybe that's obvious, but it's a nice tip to inspire you to think about kind of grooving with the, the orchestrator, grooving with the arranger. Like, you know, how would you want to hear these, you know? Kind of helping me think through. So that tip is just sort of play around with your velocities and your patterns while you're playing the notes, so you don't have to sort of think it all through and then play it and think it and play it. You can do it together. And again, I think just to reinstate something I said at the beginning in case you skipped to this section, I think this is one of the cool parts about why this is not only a glorified arpeggiator, which I think it is, but it's also better than a synthesizer arpeggiator because you get this sort of large graphic control over individual aspects of your patterns. And of course, all of these are going to be ranges that are specified in each instrument. So what you do to get those is you exit edit mode, which is either click the pencil again or click the X to leave the edit mode. And you'll see this pattern. So this is the pattern that I've been playing with for the second violins. Click the little gear or cog, and the instrument settings are going to show minimum and maximum. Those ranges are also determined by my controller. And you can't see a controller moving down here, but I should be sending controller data. Kind of sounds weird, doesn't it? Probably because it's having a hard time doing a playable run between this F and that E. Yeah, the playable runs patch is having a hard time getting back up the octave. It probably would be better if I... It's just that that's not the effect that I want. So maybe the violin runs playable patch isn't what I want for this. But assuming it is what I want, maybe I want to try just to experiment, see what it sounds like with the violin staccato to boost it, right? I think that I'm going to actually try playing with this maximum here. And I'll just say go up to 100. And maybe the minimum shouldn't be 40. Maybe the minimum should be 60. And that bottom note is, I almost don't want it there. Let's just pull it out. I think that second note needs a little more help. I'm getting closer, and I don't need to perfect this in this video. Don't get worried that you're locked into only these all the time, repetitive, over and over and over. You'll get to move them around with your mod wheel. One thing that I wanted to point out is if you make an edit I'll grab these 4 notes and trash them. So this area trashes what you've got selected. This part with all trashes all notes in the pattern. I'm going to trash what I've got selected. And then I'll demonstrate that I can undo it. And then I'm going to redo it. When I leave this edit mode and I switch to another instrument, for instance, so I'm switching to violins and I go back to violins, I can no longer undo that step. I've wiped out my undo history, so I have no undos to undo. That undo history clears out as soon as you exit or leave the pencil, click the pencil again and exit that pattern editing mode. In one of my previous videos, I set a challenge to the commenters and people watching the video, can you help me learn how to use Voice 2? I read the manual and it didn't explain a key caveat. So I'm going to try what someone recommended. The arranger mode here sometimes picks one note and sometimes picks more than one note. All notes, if you play more than one note, is obviously going to be all those. Any of the combinations that have more than one note step. Let's pick middle 2, grid, 8th notes. And now we move to Voice 2. All right, so this says upper middle and this says lower middle. When I've got middle 2 selected, Voice 1 is going to play lower middle and Voice 2 is going to play upper middle. Super cool. Let's see if it works. Let's see if it works. Nice. Now it can't do legato, it seems. It's only playing Voice 1. It's trying to fit Voice 2 in there, but the instrument is only one instrument. It's not divisying them, is it? Now I'm hearing it have a hard time wrap around. Let's ignore Voice 2 for just a moment. I'm hearing it have a hard time wrapping around and get back down here. It's kind of jerking back there. Let's just, for the fun of it, leave edit mode and click the gear cog and change the track delay back and see what happens. I heard it be about maybe 40 milliseconds. It's just dropping the note. Not really helping, is it? Nothing's helping. This is a tip that wasn't in the other video. While I've got the section muted up here, if I change the instrument over here, that instrument is going to get unmuted in the mixer section. So I'm going to mute it, move from celesta to castanets, and now it's unmuted again as castanets. Another thing is, notice how this has the lowest arranger mode for violins 1, and we see the word lowest down here. And if we switch to editing, we're using the pencil tool, switch to editing to violin staccato, the arranger mode is top, and we see the word top here. If we change the arranger mode, this is probably a bug in this version that I'm using, but maybe it's a feature request. The word top doesn't update. It still says top even though I've changed my arranger mode. It'll update if I exit and re-enter edit mode. Now it says lowest. Change it to top. Doesn't say top yet. Exit, re-enter. Now it's just going to say top. It's more obvious in percussion also, because the percussion are going to have all of the articulations. And if you change the type of drum you're using, these didn't change until I exited and entered again. Now they're going to change to those articulations. So I would consider it a bit of a bug, at least in the version that I'm using. This is 104. Maybe this will change. Maybe it's already been updated. This video has already gotten a decent amount of content for the concept of, YouTube videos. People like to stick around 12 to 15 minutes, but I want to show you one last thing, which is about the instrument selections that they give you. Now, they limit you to certain selections in these slots. You can't grab any strings instrument in this strings section. You can only put into this top slot a violin 1, the 18 violins articulations, or the solo violins articulations. So you couldn't make a cello quartet, for instance. Similarly, there's only second violins here. There's only violas here. Now, cellos, again, you get the solo cello, and then in the celli, you just get the celli articulations, and then you can only select basses. It's like that throughout, where you can't pick anything anywhere. You get French horns on the top, and then you get solo trumpet, 2 trumpets, or 3 trumpets. And then you get 2 trombones or 3 trombones. And then you get solo tuba or low brass. This piccolo flute is piccolos and flutes. This is 1 flute, I believe, and this is 3 flutes. So it doesn't say solo flute, it just says flute. I would say that sounds like 1 flute. So even though it doesn't say solo flute, it's 1 flute. Then we get oboe, English horn, 1 clarinet, again, probably a... By the way, you can reveal in libraries the instrument in your library tab, in your browse tab, using this these 3 dots here. Having a little bit of a problem with that. Sustain sounded better. Even though it's not legato, it sounds better. At least in the context of an orchestration, I assume that's going to sound better. Let's see what the legato sounded like. Wow, it actually turns out all right in the context of the orchestration. The legato slur sounded weird in isolation, but those kind of little bobbles actually kind of work, I think, in the larger context. Interesting. Then we've got bassoons, 1 bassoon, 3 bassoons, contrabassoon. So you can only pick 1. You can't have a contrabassoon and more bassoons. I mean, obviously, if you wanted a cello quartet or contrabassoon, you would just have another track with another orchestrator instance. Timpani, combos, harp. There's a lot of different cymbals and drums, and there's even a tambourine, field drum, a couple different field drums, a mark tree, anvils, Glock. I haven't played around with the harp much yet. Then we've got and even Tom's combos kit. I don't know what the combo kit is. Now, is there a way to see what these are? I guess I'd have to look in the manual. I don't know of a way to see what this is. Obviously, crash, hit. What are the difference between these 2 tam-tam hits? Yeah, I'll have to look at the manual to see all of these. This is sort of the things that I've been working through while trying to make my own patterns. And these are this is the reason that it's not trivial to spend a lot of time making your own presets. And this is why I question, to some extent, the tool, in the sense that I should just be doing this in my DAW, shouldn't I? Am I wasting time using this tool? But that's a question that you'll have to answer for yourself, and I'll have to answer for myself. And I think that individual composers will find more or less value in this tool based on how much they want to futz with this stuff, right? Is it possible to make your own patterns, get creative, do your own things, and do it quickly? Quickly enough to make it worth your while. Or is it more a case where it's really not giving you any advantage over just using a DAW? Maybe it's just easy enough to do this in your sequencer or your DAW and not worry about learning another interface to play patterns like this. I would love a way for them to introduce a feature to share presets. That opens up a market for selling presets. I think it would be a cool thing to be able to make a John Williams style preset with a woodwind run at the end of a phrase. And, you know, how long can you make these again? You can make these at least 4 measures long. So at the end of the 4 measures, do a little, you know, and that would open up a marketplace for making and selling presets. I wasn't able to easily find my presets that I had made. So I was playing around with saving categories and saving, yeah, you can see this one's called testing for video, and making my own presets. And then I wasn't really able to find where these are saved. And that doesn't mean that they're not findable. They weren't showing up in my Spotlight on my Mac. So I don't know where they are exactly and how easy they might be to deconstruct and share with others. But I think that would be an interesting feature to add, is simply be able to share your preset somewhere on the internet with others. And then it wouldn't just be a video about, you know, inspiring you to create your own, but, you know, here's a few that I could give you. And yeah, that would also open up new educational possibilities and new kind of just interest in the product. Just an idea that I had. I will close this video here. Obviously there's more to explore, but I want to keep these videos sort of contained just so that they don't get overwhelming for me or for you. Let me know if you've got any questions in the comments. I can't promise that I'll be able to answer them, and I can't promise that I'll be able to make a video about them, but at least maybe someone else can answer them for you if they're reading the comments, or if I get a chance to explore it, I'll try to answer it myself. All right, take care, enjoy, have a good time orchestrating. That's really what it's designed for.